Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You know, whenever the topic of polygamy or polygyny, the act of men marrying more than one wife, whenever this topic comes up, women always says the next thing. You know what they say? They always say, well, how would you men feel? How would men feel if their wives go and take a boyfriend? How would men feel if their wives go and take another husband? How would you feel? Again, wallahi, they need to think. Before you say things, sit down and think. How would we feel? Who cares how would a man feel? Who cares? Do you know who you're gonna have to answer to? It's Allah Azza wa Jal. You are comparing something that's permissible. A man marrying up to 2, 3, 4 wives. This is something that God, Allah, made it permissible for men. Did He make it permissible for women to marry up to marry more than one husband? Did Allah make that permissible? Before you ask, how would men feel? Ask yourself, how would Allah Azza wa Jal judge me on the day of judgment? If I go and compete with my husband because my husband took another wife, so I'm gonna go and get a boyfriend. That's what women, this is their mindset today. This is how women think today. That I'm gonna compete. Well, you can get a wife, guess what? I can get a boyfriend. Well, guess what? Your husband getting a wife in front of Allah, he didn't do nothing wrong. On the day of judgment, Allah will not judge him for that unless he didn't treat you guys the same. But he did nothing wrong. But you women going and getting a boyfriend just because your husband married another wife, you going and marrying another husband, another man behind your husband back, you have to answer to Allah for that. Subhanallah. Are you ready to face Allah on the day of judgment? Wallahi, today we think we know better. It's like Allah said that men are responsible for their wives, right? Allah made the man a provider. Man has to work, he has to provide. Imagine a man saying, well, if my wife gonna quit her job, if she's not gonna work, I'm not gonna work either. Men cannot do that. Why? Because Allah didn't make it permissible for men to just quit his job and stay home. He has to be a provider. He has to work. He has to bring money home and provide and buy food, take care of the kids. He has to work. We men have no choice but to work. For our wives, if they don't want to work, that's fine. That's fine. There's no pressure on them. If your wife say I don't want to work, the man cannot come there and say you gotta work. You gotta work. If I gotta work, you gotta work. No, she doesn't have to work. She don't want to, and you still have to provide for her. Because why? That's the law of Allah. And another law of Allah is that men can marry up to 2, 3, 4. A woman cannot come there and say, well, if he can do that, I can do the same thing. Again, at the end of the day, we all have to stand before Allah Azza wa Jal. He is the judge. That's what Allah says. It is not befitting for a believing man and believing women that when Allah and His Messenger decree a matter, when they make a decision, it is not befitting for believing men and women to come and have another opinion about that. Wallahi, it's not. A believing person, when you hear the command of Allah, you strive, you say, you know what, I hear and I obey. Sami'na wa ta'ana. We hear and we obey. We don't come there and say, well, if he can do this, it's like you're challenging Allah. So when women say that, they say, oh, how would men feel? SubhanAllah. How would you stand in front of Allah on the day of judgment? What would you say to Allah Azza wa Jal? That, oh Allah, I got a boyfriend because my husband married another wife. Oh Allah, I went and married another man because my husband took another wife. So I'm competing. No. Everybody has their right. Just like the men have to work and provide, the men have to do that. No, he has no choice in this. Once the man marry, it's his responsibility to take care of his wife and his children. So he can say, I gotta quit. He can say, well, if my wife can be a stay-at-home mom, I can be a stay-at-home dad. No, you can't do that. So just like that, men also have their own right. Women have their rights. Men have their own right. We don't have to compete and come and fight each other with it. No, whatever Allah decides, Allah is just. Allah Azza wa Jal is just. He's fair. Allah made it clear. Men marry up to 2, 3, 4. But if you can't do justice between them, if you can't treat them fairly, stick with one. That's it. But now, if a man says, well, I think I can do it, he can. That's his right. That's fine. But his wife cannot come and challenge him and say, well, you did it? Well, guess what? Boyfriend. This is the kind of mentality women have today. This is the kind of mentality. Well, if he got a boyfriend, if he can get another wife, I'm gonna do what I gotta do. They don't even understand that this command of Allah Azza wa Jal, the command to marry up to 4 wives, that is actually limited. Before that command came, before this verse came down, men used to marry up to any number of wives that they want. There was no limit. 4 actually limited it. Before, men could marry up to 100, 200 wives. SubhanAllah. So please, let's think before we talk. You know, it is Allah that will judge us, not human being. So before you worry about what men gonna think, how would men feel, ask yourself, how would Allah Azza wa Jal judge me? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.